So the plan is to create the value that we see here in this piece. Different values of gray within this piece. So we're trying to match this to this. So the first thing I want to do is start to find and build up my gray tones. So back here, I'm trying to match up the value of gray that I have back there by turning my pencil sideways. And starting to build that value. And I also want to be kind of cleaning up my edges. I'm gonna leave that way, and then I start playing this game of, is this right here, this area here is now darker than that one that I just created as close as possible to the one over here. So I'm trying to turn my pencil on its side and slowly start to build up that value. And I don't want streaks. When you're creating the box contour lines, sometimes it's okay to have like a mechanical pencil, but for this part, you probably don't want a mechanical pencil because a mechanical won't lean over and do what you want, what your regular pencil will do. Now I need to look and kind of assess. I don't want to go too dark too quick. This is still darker than what I've got here. So what I'm shooting for is probably somewhere, and I'm paying attention to my edges, somewhere in through there. And I kind of slowly build it up. Even use something called a blending stump. You look like this. You can blend with it and start to kind of get the value that you need. When you're working with a blending stump, there's no pigment inside this blending stump. It's just like a piece of paper that I'm using to blend with. So sometimes I'll see kids like trying to scrub and get more out of it. Kind of like if you have a marker that's going dead, you push harder, sometimes a little bit more ink comes out. That's not what a blending stump does. Usually all the blending stump is doing is taking your pigment that you're getting out of your pencil and blending it in. It's not giving you any more pigment than you already have on the paper. And I noticed down here, this part right here is lighter than this part up here. So I want to make that as close as possible. I'm trying to get the value as close as possible. So I'm trying to make that kind of happen up here too. The cast shadow, which is right here, is even darker than here. So that can kind of help my edge here. Make sure my line is clean. Darker here. Right here is going to be almost full black. So I'm kind of going a couple of different directions so that I can get my full black going. And then later on I can use what we call an ebony pencil to make it even darker. An ebony pencil is usually what we call like an 8B pencil. It's a softer lead, so that's why it gets darker. So if that's that dark, I think this one needs to go one more step darker. And I can use my value scale to kind of figure out, okay, how dark does this really need to be? And I continue on and on through the whole piece that way. Right here, this you would think would be white, but it's not. It's still a shade of gray. It's probably about, and if I have any lines that could be distracting to that shade of gray, I can kind of erase those out. It's probably about that shade of gray maybe. I think it's a little darker right here. See that? So I'll have to put that in here in a minute. I'm trying to get it as close as possible to the real deal. And then right here, it's actually lighter. You can see like a little bit of light happening right here. So as I'm working, one thing you can do is you can blend a little bit like that. You can take an eraser and erase back in and kind of erase back in that highlight. What's happening is the light is bouncing off of this and then bouncing here. And so that's why we're getting that. So you're also gonna have a little bit of a gray tone. Right back here. And then this turns almost jet black gray. This is gonna go even darker. And I'm gonna continue to build and build and build until I get all of my values the way they need to be. Here, it's gonna go from darkest of dark here into like a lightest of light. So it's gotta make a progression, kind of a boom stop edge. It stops immediately. This one's a little bit more blurry, actually more blurry than I've got. So let me see if I can kind of make that a little bit more fuzzy. And as it gets out here, it gets a little cleaner. Up in here, it's not that. It goes from this really dark into this lighter gray into white. And you want to get that progression using your blending stump and using your tools so that it makes it look like it's a different area. You don't want it looking like edges because it's not edges. So as an artist, your job is to communicate what the edges are doing. So if you don't communicate if something's an edge that stops quick, then people will just assume it keeps rolling on. And if you don't communicate that it's a blended edge, that it's maybe like a foggier space, then people will misunderstand what kind of space that is. So your job as an artist is to make sure that that edge is clear. It's kind of like when you're talking and you want to enunciate so that people can understand what you're saying, what you're communicating. If you've ever heard anybody mumble, it's really frustrating because you can't quite tell what they're saying. Well, if you do that with an edge, if you're not real clear about your edge, it's almost like you're mumbling, like you're not communicating as clearly as you could be.